Hey, welcome to my channel. I am Dr. Shareece, and this is Spirit Soul Sense Information for Your Soul. Today we are going to be talking about Gazelle Monet's live that she did, where she talked about her relationship with Hindz and detailed all the red flags that she ignored and how it ended. I am going to be going over relationships, self-esteem, a little bit about Christianity, how to heal, basically doing the work so that you can learn from her experience. So Gazelle Monet left a comment on my last video that I did about Hindz, where she said thank you for how I explained my thoughts about him. And then she said we had the same name. That is what led me to her channel to even realize that she had a live. And she's not afraid of accountability. And I'm also guessing that she might see this video. So girl, this is not personal, no hard feelings. Thank you for sharing your story, and I do think it will help people. This is literally my area of expertise. I have lots of other videos about women in toxic relationships and how to heal. My favorite book I have here because I love it so much, Women Who Love Too Much, because this is literally what will help you get out of the toxic codependent cycle that exists in abusive relationships. So the first thing that I heard Miss Gazelle say she did was she made a list about 50 things that she did not want in a man. And if you're new to spirituality or to manifestation, this is literally the opposite of what you want to do. The universe does not know the difference between what you like and what you don't like. It only knows the difference between what you focus on versus what you don't focus on. And so if you make a list of all the things you don't want, it's basically the same as making a list of all the things you do want. Whether you want it or not, if you focus on it, that is what you will get. You will attract that energy into your life. And then the fact that this list was shared on the internet for people to see, potential men to see, another strategy for attracting the wrong kind of person. Because she goes on to say that he was basically 47 or something of the things on her list. And now I do have a lot to say on how she met Hindz, because if this was my little sister, girl, I've done some, things in my 20s that I'm not proud of. But this was so unsafe in so many ways. So she explains that they had messaged on Twitter. He had been following her for some time, I think maybe years. But, generic messages, more like comments under things, not like a real conversation. And definitely nothing romantic, right? It's just like two people on the internet who enjoy the same kind of topics having conversations. And she's a content creator, so he's a content creator, and so they have that in common. And then they were talking about like ideas for content, and he was explaining to her that he was going to Jamaica, and then he invited her, you should come. This is one of the biggest, one of the biggest red flags. It reminds me of a conversation I had with Kora. She has a podcast, and we have a couple videos together where she tells this story of being a stripper, having met a man, having men take care of her in a certain way, and being flued out, shout out to Young Miami, and basically not having freedom, right? Basically being under the control of this person who was actually very much controlling. It wasn't a reciprocal relationship, it was more like a transactional relationship. So he invites her to Jamaica, flies her out. They only had one FaceTime conversation. Again, this is nothing romantical, and I don't think she's seen any business contracts or any layout on what the plan is for anything. But, she talks about, oh, this is a guy that has all these followers, and he's so spiritual, and he was telling her that he's Christian, even though I never heard him say that he was Christian. I think this was something he told her to get access to. And so, right, the parasocial relationship that's in the mind, thinking that this is going to be what? In my mind, right, a young lady thinking about the access, notoriety, money that this person has, when you have no idea who they are as a real person. You haven't asked them any of the real questions to get a sense of who they are. In fact, the premise that you're going based off of is that, of course, this person who shows themselves to be online is what they're going to be in real life. I'm not sure I would make that sort of assumption with anybody on the internet. I try to remind you all, I don't share everything about my personal life here. I'm a mother every day. You all don't see that here on my channel. I'm a psychologist. I do real work, right? I have to answer to licensing bodies, all that stuff. You don't get access to all of that in my life. If you met me in real life, I think you would find me to be fun and enjoyable and all the things. But I would never assume that the personas that people have online are exactly who they're going to be in real life. And I would never, ever, 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 ever encourage a young woman to be flued out by a man who is not her man. Okay? Because at the end of the day, men are men. And that's not a bad thing, right? My boyfriend, my future husband, is super spiritual, okay? And he still really enjoys sex. Do you understand what I mean? There are going to be aspects about a man, and especially if you want a masculine man who is going to be confident and take what he wants and go after and achieve and work hard, all those things. Men are not flying out, paying for women to attend things, go to things, giving women money for nothing. That's not what men do. They always want something. And I'm not saying this is right. I'm just telling you what it is. They always want something. And so if this is not a business arrangement where you have all the details lined out about what is going to be expected for you, what the compensation is going to be, you are headed into danger.
You in danger, girl.
Headed into danger. And I know the atmosphere of social media when we're talking about heterosexual relationships, what might be, I have thoughts on that I'm not going to share here about, okay. The internet has lots of thoughts on heterosexual man-woman relationships, right? A lot of the discussion kinds of blends into sex work, transactional relationships, money for sex, money from a man for access to a beautiful woman. That is how social media is framing a lot, right? Men are only good for their money, women are only good for their beauty. When that is one of the worst ways to do a long-term relationship. If you want to be in a long-term, healthy, loving relationship, that is not the way to start it. You want to start with values and not what you can get from the relationship. Because what you can get from the relationship will have the relationship over in a year or 2 or 5, okay? So one of the things that stood out to me about Gazelle Monet's story was how she talked about how she couldn't talk, right? She was in the car with him. She couldn't speak. Like, there were questions that she thought of, but she didn't ask them. Even after they got to their Airbnb, she said it was ASMR. There was no conversation. She didn't ask any questions. She just sort of went with the flow. And this is one of those points on self-esteem. Are you able to say what you want to say? Are you able to express and communicate your needs in a way that the other person will be able to understand? Like, your throat chakra being closed says a lot about where you are as a woman, where you are as a person, and being able to speak up. And she does talk about, she doesn't go into details on her traumas per se, but you can guess that some of the, even agreeing to be flown to meeting a man in an airport for the first time, just is a lot of lack of judgment, but also a lack of value for self. Because why would you put yourself in a situation like that? This is not, I don't victim blame, but I do acknowledge that a toxic relationship takes 2 toxic people. And Hindz might be 80% of the toxicity, but Miss Gazelle Monet is at least 20%, 20, 30, 40, I don't know, some of the percentage. Because in terms of taking accountability, you have to acknowledge that you played a role in this thing going on for so long that you didn't see it before you entered it, and then it took you so long to see it after you were in it and then to leave. It's a part of the process. It's okay. There's really no judgment here. On average, most women take about 7 times to leave an abusive relationship. And I'm not saying there was any sort of physical abuse, but there was definitely some manipulation, power and control that was a part of this relationship. She said something about wondering if it was a power thing for him. I forget what it is that she said, but there is definitely inherently a power dynamic in a man with access and influence on, trying to influence a woman, a young woman that doesn't know as much as him, and then separating her from her family, whether like moving in so quickly, having this marriage, was it a romance, having this isolating aspect to the relationship, and him probably having the expectation that even if things didn't last, even if they ended badly, that she probably won't see anything. That is part of what we've seen so much in the Me Too movement. And you can use Cassie and Diddy as an example. There's a reason Cassie didn't speak out, because y'all wasn't believing her anyway. I think at a certain point of her own healing journey, it's important to tell her story. I'm not sure Gazelle Monet is at that point. And in the book, Women Who Love Too Much, telling your story is the last step, and it's important for you to share amongst women in a community, in a safe space, what happened to you, and to relate to other women who it's happened to. But the sharing your story prematurely, venting in a way to strangers on the internet who don't have the patience or the care for your emotional well-being, I wouldn't recommend. I know everybody works differently, and I hope it was healing for you, Miss Gazelle, doing your live and talking for hours and hours. But in general, I wouldn't recommend sharing your story with people who don't care about you. Waiting to share your story with somebody who can actually hold space for you after you've processed all the things. She also said she felt like she couldn't turn around, right? At some point, she realized, I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here. I'm not sure this is what I really want. But that feeling of not being able to turn around because you've invested time, you've already flown out, you've already had sex with him, I might as well keep going because maybe it will get better. Maybe we'll have a conversation that changes things or means things, or maybe he will show me a side of him that I didn't see. Maybe I'll understand him better in time. Maybe, but that is highly unlikely. You should have never went, but okay, you went. After your time in Jamaica, I'm wondering what made you, and maybe this is part of the life I missed, why did you keep talking to this man? I would have felt like after I left Jamaica, because the trip kept getting extended, I'm like, you must not have no kids or responsibilities or people looking for you, because you just going, you don't got something to do home or just to be at home. But that process after you left Jamaica, what happened between then and moving in with him? What made you say, I'm going to keep talking to him now? Like, was it him talking about Christianity thing that made you feel like, oh, he's Christian, he is Hindz, he's who he is, and so you want to just keep it going? I must have missed that part because I couldn't understand why you moved in after what that experience was like. I didn't get it. She made a point about Christianity and how Hindz referred to himself as the Lord's reject. I think that's so ironic because my boyfriend calls himself God's favorite. But her connection between him and referring to himself as the Lord's reject, she meant like he's like a demon. I acknowledge that there are a lot of different ways to do spirituality and that some people do not worship God, but I also acknowledge that if you do any digging into the origins of Christianity, you will not like what you see. I don't think any of that takes away from the fact that Jesus Christ did exist and did, perform miracles, but the way that Christianity is packaged is very much to control people. That's the side I'm on. I love Jesus. Jesus is the homie, but I don't call myself Christian for this very reason. I've done the digging into the origins of Christianity, and I'm not gonna get into the Bible here. I think the Bible is a beautiful book. I think the stories are true, but lots of different religions aim to control the populations, the masses. But for me, what's most important is your relationship with God. Are you a good person? Are you getting the things that you want out of life? Do you wake up feeling happy and ready to take on the day? Or, you're just walking around judging people, criticizing people, mad at God because you're not getting what it is that you want. You can make religion work however you want it to work for you. But I also really encourage setting aside time where it's just you and God, because the language of God is silence. And if you cannot sit in silence, you are really not in communion with God. While they were in Jamaica, she said she slept in the master bedroom and he slept on the couch. At some point, there was a friend involved, and as she was talking about the friend after they got romantical, she said after things got romantic, which to me sounded like after they had sex. Because the first night he slept on the couch, the second night he slept in the same bed with her. I don't know if they had sex that same night, but at some point in the week, things got romantic. That's her wording, which to me means they had sex or there was some sexual intimacy that happened. She was wondering why the friend was still there, because then they had moved to another Airbnb or moved to a hotel. When I heard the story, because I've heard so much sexual trauma stories, I definitely thought the guy was there to see if he could get some too. That's what I thought. That's why he was there. He was there to try and see if he could get in, if they could switch beds that night, something like that. That's what I was thinking, because of that whole, the way you described that whole situation, very, very unsafe situation. I would not encourage any woman to do anything like this. I understand that people, meet their gaming friends online who they've been talking to for months or years, or people meet online after a certain amount of time, but they've talked and they've had real conversations, and so they know what they're getting into. Other people know where they're going. There's a level of intimacy that's already been formed, and so they're expecting the best, not having any idea on what to expect. He also made grand gestures. I didn't catch what these grand gestures were. I'm guessing it has something to do with money, but yes, that's definitely a red flag. A man who's very much interested in you might come on strong, but he's not going to love bomb you. The goal of love bombing is to build you up so that they can tear you down. He's going to match not just the actions of I want to love you and get to know you. He is going to say it and then be consistent over time. She also said they only had deep conversations over text. I love to text, but I also love having deep conversations. I've heard in some not so healthy relationships that people use text to communicate. I strongly advise not using text especially if we're talking about deep or important subjects, because texting is one of the best ways to be misunderstood and to misunderstand people. Have a heart-to-heart. At the very least, have a video call where you're having these deep conversations so that all the nonverbals are also included, so you can get to actually know the person and see the synchrony between their thoughts and how they're emoting on their face. She explained that he wanted to know all about her history and all about her traumas, and he didn't really reciprocate vulnerability, is what it sounded like to me. I think maybe he shared something that happened with his trauma, childhood, something, but nothing too deep, and definitely not expansive in the way that would be helpful in getting to know a person for a relationship. She said she had never seen a man protecting women in the way that she saw Hindz protecting women, because he explained to her that he grew up around women and he kind of saw women as not necessarily romantic. Like, it was hard to feel romantic with a woman because he grew up around so many women and went out of his way to protect women. That meant a lot to me, things I'm not gonna say in this video, but from her perspective, wanting a man who, wow, I've never seen a man protect women, right, speaks to the level of trauma experience, because at the very least, I would encourage women to understand men in a way where you don't only have access to toxic men, that you have seen multiple men in your life speak positively about women, defend women not only with their words, but with their action. Even platonic relationships. And I know platonic relationships are a difficult thing to do when you live in America, but I really would encourage you to at least pay attention to one of your coworkers. Not that you have to be buddy-buddy with him, but that you can identify some men amongst the general, population who love women, right? Not just love the women that they can sleep with or the women that they need, like their moms or their sisters, but in general, have a respect, a love, appreciation for feminine energy, and, treats it as valuable as it is. And then she did talk about how they broke up. I'm not sure all the things that came before him cheating, but he found her replacement, basically. I think they were things that she was doing or wasn't doing that got to the point where he realized, oh, she's not going to be of use to me anymore, or she's probably trying to find a way out of this relationship, so let me secure my next one up. And so there's a woman she was describing who has a social media account but doesn't do social media management like professionally, but who he also moved in, because I guess that's one of his patterns, moving women in pretty quickly. Moved her in, but he is paying her. He never paid Miss Gazelle for the work that she did, her creativity that she, contributed to his channel. But he is paying this other woman, but she purports that this other woman is not going to be paid for very long, because Hindz, according to her, is the kind of man who's going to say, I'm basically paying for everything here. You don't also need to be paid separately. If that's the case, that's the case. A lot of people go through toxic cycles, and some people never exit them. There are so many people in their 70s, 80s, 90s. The oldest person that I've worked with was 91, who was just stuck. You think stuckness has something to do with your age? It really doesn't. It's a mindset. But she was just stuck in all the mistakes that she made. You can forgive yourself. You can ask others for forgiveness if you want to be in community with them. Like, I do think it's important for Hindz to acknowledge some of this stuff, because there is a redemption arc that everyone can follow. Maybe not for the most heinous of things. Some people spend life in jail, but I'm not sure he's killed anybody, right? That it's that bad. But it's really important for everyone to take stock of their own lives, right? Remember, this is about you. We're using this as an example, but I want you to reflect on you. What are some patterns that you need to change in your life? And then to close out, one of the reasons why I wanted to recommend Women Who Love Too Much to Miss Gazelle, and for other women who are experiencing or have experienced but are still in the healing journey as her, is because there is a level of addiction involved in these types of relationships. Typically, the man is addicted to something and the woman is addicted to the relationship, fixing the relationship, understanding the relationship, or something like that. The something that a man can be addicted to can really vary. It can be work, it can be his family, it can be drugs. And I think Hindz has talked about a history of drug use. I hope I'm not making that up, because I hope I'm not making that up. I think he talked about drug use and that being a problem for him. These toxic cycles are difficult to get out of. At first, you have to be aware that you're in it. She also described a previous relationship where she was involved with a man who was preaching about veganism and you need to be vegan, and he was eating a whole bunch of meat and trash outside of whatever platform he was using. Having similar men, right? In my case, I was with one man who I just went back to. He was so toxic. I was so toxic. Some women, a lot of women, just go from man to man, but they pick the same man. At the core, the man is the same. The person you pick is a reflection of you. If you could see the history of men that I've dated, you will see a reflection of my growth. There's a lot of work to be done, Miss Gazelle, and she did say that she's in therapy. But I think it's also really important to acknowledge your role, and maybe it is 30%. Girl, I don't know what it is. You can decide what the percentage is that you need to be responsible for. What level of blind spots have you been ignoring that you would attract another similar situation with a man who is not who he says he is? This is your experience, right? You were with a man who is not who he said he is, but you were also with another man who wasn't who he said he was. So what is it that you need to work on in yourself so that you do not attract this experience again? If you do not figure it out, I promise you, it will happen again. It will. Until you heal, until you do that shadow work, until you acknowledge and admit to yourself, wait a second, it's me. It's me. I'm the problem. It's me. Yes, you are part of the problem. And so doing that inner work will help you figure out, what is it that I need to work on? What is it that I need to change? What more reflection do I need to do to be more happy, more whole, more confident, with higher self-esteem, so that my values match my standards, and so that the things that I expect are positive and loving. It typically starts with the thoughts that you think to yourself. But I really encourage this book. This book changed my life, and I have lots of videos on my channel about this book. I talk about this book with Summer Walker. I talk about this book, I think, with Kenya Moore. I think there's one other person I did about this book, because it's so clear the pattern of toxicity, the cycle that exists, that you need to break in order to heal. Leave me another comment, Gazelle, if you feel so. Also, if you're watching this video, you're not Gazelle, please leave me a comment if you've been in one of these types of relationships. If you're looking for help, read this book, watch other videos on my channel. I do life coaching, but girl, I'm full. If you feel like you can attract this experience with me, you can go to the link in my description box to request a session. But I think I have Wednesday afternoons might be the time I have available. I love doing this work. I do think with your own therapist, reading this book, journaling, you can do the steps to heal yourself. Go ahead and like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel. Share this video with another woman you think loves too much. And thank you for watching.